After a short battle with cancer, Eleanor Shireen Boychuk died at the Beltline Hospital in Calgary on the evening of April 21st, 2159, at the age of 89 years. She was predeceased by her husband Bob in 2150, her daughter Elsmelda in 2136, and daughter-in-law Sheila in 2152, her brother Sean in 2140. She is survived by her brother James, sons Roger and William, daughter-in-law Nora, 11 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. Eleanor was born in Weyburn, Saskatchewan in 2070, the first child in a family of 5. She was quickly noted for her ability with music, studies, and various household responsibilities at a young age. She excelled at school and played competitive basketball throughout her junior and senior high school years. In 2088, Eleanor enrolled in the University of Calgary's School of Practical Medicine, a 5-year program to train first-level doctors. In her 3rd year, her students' residents saw some of her talents for governance that she wasn't seeing. They elected her as their neighborhood representative. She recalled that her studies prevented her from participating as fully as a neighborhood representative should have been. Regardless, her fellow residents kept electing her for the next 3 years. She got some very valuable experience about TDG governance at a very young age. After graduation, Eleanor went overseas to work in hospitals and clinics in Ukraine and Kenya. In Kenya, she met Bob Fillmore, who hailed from Eleanor's university town of Calgary. The Calgary connection in Africa was too strong, and they were married in 2095. They stayed in Kenya for another 5 years, where Roger and Elsmelda were born. Bob was called to Geneva as a United Nations logistics engineer. There, William was born. 2 years later, work in the corporate world brought Bob back to his hometown of Calgary, and the family came with him. With young kids to take care of, Eleanor stayed home and often entertained many of the neighborhood's children. She also volunteered for various neighborhood programs and causes. The neighborhood saw her great capacity and character and elected her as its neighborhood representative. Although this election meant giving up some of her local volunteer work, her neighborhood elected her for many years after. When the youngest child was in grade 3, Eleanor decided it was time to return to her profession. After a 6-month refresher, she was working shifts at the emergency ward at the Susina Hospital. Hospital management was pleased that it had an employee who was also an active member in the TDG. It allowed Eleanor time off with pay to attend her TDG meetings, and it appreciated Eleanor's consultative nature when addressing various concerns in hospital operations. Eleanor had a great impact on hospital policy despite being a frontline worker. Eleanor always had ambitions of attaining her 2nd-level doctor's training, but the TDG seemed to have other ideas. In 2112, Eleanor was elected as a district representative. She cut back her work schedule to 3 shifts a week to accommodate her increased responsibilities in the TDG. A year and a half later, she was elected as quadrant representative. The duties of the quadrant representative consumed much of her time, but she still worked 5 shifts a month at the hospital to maintain her medical license. She held this position for 15 years, and her medical experience was utilized many times in consultations for Calgary's and Alberta's public decisions on healthcare. In 2129, at the age of 59, the High Tier of Canada asked Eleanor to serve as chief board member for Southern Alberta and Southern Saskatchewan. She told her family that this position was her most enjoyable service with the TDG. Her biggest challenge was bringing the elected bodies of the various municipalities along the Trans-Canada Highway together to connect them to Calgary's tube-cancel transit system and helping them resolve all sorts of technical and social issues to implement this new technology. 3 years later, she was appointed to a higher tier within the advisory board. She oversaw the operations of board members across Western Canada and Western United States, making appointments of recognized individuals and assisting them in their duties. She held this position for 8 years. On her 70th birthday, Eleanor announced that it was time for a slower pace of life, and she asked not to be reappointed for another term in her advisory position. She and Bob downsized their big house and moved into a condo in a new neighborhood in Calgary. This neighborhood knew her reputation and had her elected as its representative. But she didn't display the energy to move her further up the tiers like she did before. At 75, she told the neighborhood, "It's time you elected someone younger." Despite her great TDG experience and still great service to the neighborhood residents, many of them accepted her informal resignation and cast their votes to another capable individual. Thus, Eleanor retired from the TDG after 38 years of service. To those of us reading this obituary from the dawn of the 21st century, we sense something very strange about Eleanor's career in governance. She never joined a political party. She never campaigned. She never asked anyone to vote for her. She never asked for campaign donations. She made no deals to get elected. She never had a mandate to get something specific done within her term. She was never threatened to get something done to keep her elected job. She only gave the TDG what she thought was best for her society. In the many elections she was called to serve, she never insisted those with differing ideas were fools. She always worked cooperatively with whoever the citizenry sent into governance. She made no enemies as she rose higher in the TDG. She accepted her TDG elections and appointments with humility, responsibility, and the spirit of service. Had the TDG not put her into public positions, she would have been happy being an ordinary citizen, taking care of her family, furthering her medical career, and volunteering for her community. We, in the 21st century, can only admire public officials such as Eleanor Shireen Boychuk. But then again, the system of governance that will elect her will be much different than the system we have today.